This is the Aqualung i100 dive computer. I created a video on changing the battery because the other videos that I found do not address two things that I think are quite important. One of the things that they do not mention is when you remove this cover, it's supposed to be removed by turning it using the provided key in a clockwise direction. Almost everything unscrews counterclockwise. So you just remember lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. However, in this particular instance, you're going to turn it to the right, but only 10 degrees. And that's how you take this cover off. You see I've removed it. I had to pause because I'm operating the camera as well. And this is what just got removed. So you set that to the side. The other thing that they did not mention, they say, okay, you just take this off. They don't tell you to use a tool or anything. They show somebody just, and this is more than one video I saw, just taking this off just like I did here. The first time you take it off, there appears that there's little or no silicone grease. So it's going to be a little bit of a struggle with your fingernails under there or maybe a tiny screwdriver. You got to be very careful that you don't damage any of the plastic when you pop off the actual battery cover after you've removed this retaining ring. Once the retaining ring and battery cover are removed, you just take out this battery retainer that's in here, and that comes out easily. So you set that to the side. Now the O-ring, since I've done this already, has been lubricated with silicone grease, which brings me to a third point, which should be mentioned in other videos. When you put grease on here, do not use Vaseline or anything that's made from petroleum, because if the O-ring itself is made out of rubber, the petroleum would degenerate it pretty quick. So you need to get either silicone grease or dielectric grease. Either one of those can be found at an auto parts store. You just ask for dielectric grease or silicone grease. The other important thing that I have not found mentioned, and it's a no-brainer, you want to see the battery orientation. In this case, you can see the actual battery. If I zoom in a little bit, that's the one that you'll need, the CR2450. Make sure it's orientated the correct way with the right side of it up as it was when you took it out. You just pop the battery out. You don't bend this little tang at all. Don't bend it. Just get it out. That's just holding it in place. Everything goes back in reverse order. Now, since the O-ring was already lubricated with the dielectric silicone grease, I didn't show myself putting it back in again. I'm working the camera too here. Make sure that it's in place and it's not jumped out anywhere. That's really important because you don't want it to get pinched. You put your cover back in place where it's supposed to go. And this brings me to a point that I think should be addressed. When you first take it out, this cover is difficult to get out. Once you've lubricated the O-ring and you're putting it back in, it actually requires resistance to hold it down, and you can feel it when you let go. It kind of jumps out of place. So that's why you want to make sure the O-ring, look really careful, have good lighting, that it's seated properly before you try to put this retainer back in place over the battery cover. I did forget to mention that you need to put this retainer back in, but through the magic of video, I just did it, and I'm going to put the cover back in place here. So as I was saying earlier, you do have to actually push this down. You'll feel it want to jump back out. Just make sure the O-ring's in place. I can't stress that importance. The final retainer here has two little tangs that need to be aligned with the slots that are pretty obvious. You can see them here. So you get the slots lined up with this. Now when you push this back in place, you're going to be holding it down and using the provided key in the little two little receivers here. As you're holding it down, now you're going to be putting it in counterclockwise. So you're going to be turning it left for the final tightening. So I successfully reinstalled this retainer by lining it up, as I said, and I was holding it down and using the key, and it was only a 10-degree counterclockwise to the left. Double check your little tangs here that they've actually received. And remember that, the most important thing is that O-ring is in place before you put the whole shebang back together. It really is easy, and the only reason I pause the video while I'm doing the operation is because I'm working the camera too. Getting somebody else involved in this would just be ridiculous. So you'll have no problem with it. Just remember the O-ring and that the rotation is the opposite for loosening it and tightening it, as you would think. Thanks for watching the video. Please give a thumb up if it's helpful.